Have you ever wondered if God, or the divine spark, is actually within each of us? Not somewhere far away in the heavens, not through intermediaries, dogma, or elaborate rituals, but as a sacred light quietly residing within you. Right now. Since ancient times, humanity has looked to the skies, seeking salvation, guidance, and a reason to exist. But what few realize is this: the greatest truth has never been hidden, only forgotten. And that truth is, you don't need to search for God because you are already a part of Him. In this video, I won't take you to some mythical realm. I won't promise miracles after a few easy steps. But if you're willing to let go of the illusions, your limits, your fears, your socially imposed identities, then you'll begin to see the true miracle, the divine power that lives in your own heart. This isn't just another motivational video. This is a wake-up call, an ancient reminder your soul once knew, but the noise of the world made you forget. You are light, you are creation, and you absolutely have the power to awaken the God within. You were born divine, but a system worked from your first breath to make you forget. No chains needed, just quiet control through unquestioned rules, absorbed beliefs, and dreams you were told to chase. It shrank the infinite into something small, compliant. Yet deep inside, a hum persists, a silent knowing that life isn't what it seems, that you're more than they said. This isn't new philosophy. It's a reminder of what you already know but were taught to bury. The divine within you is real. Wake it up. You didn't just forget. You were programmed to. School, media, religion, none were neutral. They buried your divinity under obedience, fear, distraction. From your first words, you got scripts defining who you are, what's real, what's impossible. Stories made you small before you could question them. It worked. Not because you were weak, but because you were open, curious. They called it education, but it was indoctrination, masked by grades, training your body to submit, your mind to accept rewritten history, skewed science, and compliance-glorifying literature. You were born divine, but a system worked from your first breath to make you forget. No chains needed, just quiet control through unquestioned rules, absorbed beliefs, and dreams you were told to chase. It shrank the infinite into something small, compliant. Yet, a hum persists, a silent knowing you're more than they said. This isn't philosophy. It's a reminder of what you know, but were taught to bury. The divine in you is real. Wake it up. You didn't just forget. You were programmed to. School, media, religion, none neutral. They buried your divinity under obedience, fear, distraction. From your first words, scripts defined you. What's real, what's impossible. Stories made you small before you could question. It worked, not because you were weak, but because you were open. They called it education, but it was indoctrination, masked by grades, training your body to submit, your mind to accept rewritten history, skewed science, compliance-glorifying literature. You were told, follow rules, respect authority, be realistic, don't question, don't dream big. These weren't just rules, they built your cage. Even your parents and teachers trapped in the same system passed down this programming, not out of malice, but because it's all they knew. It's not their fault nor yours, but now it's your responsibility. Seeing the truth breaks the spell. You've been living someone else's script, wearing ill-fitting clothes, chasing goals that aren't yours, measuring your worth by strangers' standards. Yet, a whisper persists. This isn't it. There's more. That's not fantasy. It's memory, ancient code in your DNA, waiting to awaken. Ancient civilizations knew this. Egyptians called it Nita, a divine principle within you. Vedic sages named it Atman, inseparable from the infinite. These weren't myths, but maps. The modern world dismisses them as mysticism because if you remembered your divinity, the control system would crumble. That's why schools and media avoid this truth. When you realize you're not powerless, you stop playing their game, buying illusions, obeying. Consciousness isn't something you have, it's what you are, a soul animating a body. Seeing yourself as a spark of the infinite changes everything. But knowing isn't enough. You must unlearn false identities and agreements made to fit in. It's not easy. It's a spiritual war against mental noise, but it's the path to reclaiming your true self. But this is where it begins. The moment you realize that the system wasn't built to liberate you, it was built to contain you. And the only way out is in. If there's one part of your body they fear you fully understanding, it's your pineal gland. That tiny, pine cone-shaped structure in the center of your brain isn't just another organ, it's a biological portal. What ancient cultures revered as the third eye, the seat of the soul, the gateway between physical and spiritual realities. The Egyptians carved it into their temple walls. Eastern traditions built entire systems around activating it. Descartes called it the principal seat of the soul. And yet, in modern medicine, it's reduced to an afterthought. Why? Because awakening it awakens you, and an awakened you is ungovernable. They don't want that. So instead, they attack it systematically, chemically, quietly. Look around. The most common substances in your environment weren't randomly chosen. Fluoride in your water, glyphosate in your food, microplastics in your blood, heavy metals in the air and soil. All of these substances share one horrifying trait. They accumulate in the pineal gland and calcify it. That's not some fringe theory. It's documented, peer-reviewed, proven, but somehow still ignored. Because acknowledging it would mean admitting that there's a war on your perception, a war you never consented to, a war most people don't even know they're losing. The pineal gland is responsible for producing melatonin, sure, but that's just the surface-level understanding. In states of spiritual activation, deep meditation, altered states, breathwork, it does far more. It becomes a transceiver, tuning you into frequencies beyond the material. It's how mystics communicate with what they call the divine. It's how visionaries access states of hyper-intuition, inner knowing, and multi-dimensional awareness. And what happens when it's calcified? You don't just sleep worse. You perceive less. You disconnect from the signals trying to reach you. The channel between your ego and your essence gets static. And in that static, the system thrives. That's why they lace your toothpaste with fluoride and tell you it's good for your teeth. That's why they designed food to be convenient, addictive, and toxic. That's why your environment is filled with endocrine disruptors and neurotoxins. It's not just about health, it's about awareness. You think you're choosing breakfast cereal, but you're being steered toward mental fog. You think it's just a drink, but it's another dose of energetic sedation. And over time, you stop asking questions. You stop seeing the patterns. You stop feeling the pull of something more. That's how they win, through slow, invisible sabotage. And the irony, you still feel it. Even under all that calcification, even buried beneath years of programming, there's still a whisper in you. You still get moments, flashes, that strange sensation that you're meant for more, that you're not seeing the whole picture, that reality is wider, deeper, weirder than what you're told. That's your third eye trying to break through. It's not dead, just dormant. And the fact that it's been attacked so precisely, so pervasively, is the best proof of how important it really is. Reclaiming it doesn't require blind belief. It requires intention. It starts with removing the substances designed to block it. It continues with practices that stimulate, cleanse, and reawaken it. And it ends with you beginning to remember that what you perceive through your physical eyes is only a sliver of what's real. You're not limited to five senses. You're not trapped in linear time. You're not a body with awareness. You are awareness expressing through a body. And the pineal is the antenna. Once you understand that, everything changes. Dreams become messages. Synchronicities become data. Intuition becomes guidance, not guesswork. The fog starts to lift, and, for the first time, you begin to perceive reality not just as it's been presented to you, but as it is, raw, expansive, alive. You don't need psychedelics to get there. You need clarity. You need detox. You need discipline. And most of all, you need to want the truth more than you want comfort. Because waking up isn't easy, but it's the only way to stop sleepwalking through someone else's idea of life. The deeper you go, the more obvious it becomes. This isn't just about chemicals in your water or lies in your textbooks. It's not just about governments, corporations, or institutions. There's something beneath all of that, something older, something that doesn't wear a suit or hold a title. You're not just living in a broken system. You're living inside a spiritual battlefield. And most people don't even know there's a war going on. That's how good the control is. Ancient Gnostic texts spoke of beings called archons, non-physical entities that thrive on fear, chaos, and division. They aren't movie monsters. They aren't villains in robes. They don't need to be seen because they operate through systems, through thoughts, through emotions. You've felt them. That voice that makes you second-guess your truth, that anxiety that hits you out of nowhere when you start to speak freely, that fear that tells you to stay silent, play small, conform. It doesn't always come from you. And that's not superstition, it's frequency. You've been told your consciousness is just neurons firing in your brain, but consciousness isn't local. It's not a product of your biology, it's the source. And just like a radio can pick up interference, your mind can pick up signals that aren't yours. Low vibrational entities feed off human emotion, particularly fear, shame, guilt, and division. And they're not trying to possess you like Hollywood says. They want you to remain fragmented. Because when you're disconnected from your divine self, when you're caught in loops of fear and overthinking, you're leaking energy. That's what they feed on. And how do they keep you in that state? Through the systems that define your life. Media floods your senses with tragedy, conflict, and rage, not to inform you, but to entrain your mind to chaos. Religion preaches fear of damnation while promising salvation from a God outside yourself. Education punishes imagination and rewards memorization. These structures weren't hijacked. They were built as control mechanisms, gateways for energetic parasitism. The archonic forces don't run the show, but they influence the architecture. They whisper into the minds of the powerful. They inspire the creation of policies, institutions, and distractions that keep humanity asleep. They don't want a population that meditates, breathes deeply, questions everything, and remembers its divine origin. They want a reactive, exhausted, overstimulated species, too busy scrolling and stressing to notice their own light dimming, and you might think this is too far, too weird, too much. But look around. Why else would nearly every aspect of life be built to distort your awareness, not expand it? Why else would substances that increase consciousness be illegal, while substances that numb it are sold on every street corner? Why else would the most ancient consciousness-activating symbols and practices be mocked, banned, or buried? It's because they know the truth. The moment you remember what you are, you unplug from their power source. You stop leaking your energy through fear. You stop reacting and start observing. And when you observe without feeding the fear, the entire system begins to unravel. This isn't about fighting. This isn't about war in the way you've been taught. This is spiritual warfare. And awareness is the only weapon that works. Because once you're aware, they lose their grip. And what's left is something they can't touch: your presence. The archons are real, but they don't win through force. They win through forgetfulness, through distraction, through self-doubt. Their greatest victory is convincing you they don't exist while operating through every fear you carry. But now you see the pattern, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's the beginning of sovereignty, not belief, not rebellion, just seeing clearly, seeing through the illusion without being trapped by it. That's your shield. That's your sword. And that's the shift that turns you from a target into a transmitter, one that broadcasts truth instead of fear. They didn't need to put you in chains. They just had to convince you were someone you're not. That's the most effective form of control, when the cage is invisible and the prisoner polices themselves. You were born as pure awareness, undefinable, unlimited, formless. But over time, layer by layer, they gave you an identity, a name, a nationality, a gender, a religion, a personality. And you believed it, not because you were naive, but because they started early, before you even knew what belief was. They built a mask around your light, then taught you to call that mask me. This identity isn't your fault, but it is your responsibility to question it. Because most of what you think is you is just borrowed programming. You were rewarded for being agreeable. You were praised for being quiet. You learned quickly which parts of yourself were acceptable and which parts needed to be buried to be loved, accepted, included. You edited yourself to survive. And eventually, you forgot you were editing. You stopped being. You started performing. The system loves performers. It thrives when you confuse obedience with morality, when you think self-worth comes from productivity, when you spend your life chasing roles that have nothing to do with your essence. Student, employee, spouse, citizen, influencer. These are roles, not realities. They're functions inside a game designed to keep you externally focused and internally fragmented. And the more attached you are to the mask, the easier it is to manipulate you. That's why questioning your identity feels like dying, because in a way it is. The constructed self doesn't want to be seen through. It wants to keep playing the game, collecting validation and avoiding rejection. But real awakening begins when you stop asking, "Who am I?" and start asking, "What am I?" Because the moment you stop trying to be someone and start recognizing yourself as the awareness behind the someone, the illusion cracks. This is why the system encourages constant self-definition. Choose your labels, curate your profile, brand yourself, build a narrative, reinforce it daily. It's all a distraction. Because as long as you're playing the identity game, you're not asking the only question that matters: who is watching all this? Who is the one behind the roles, behind the thoughts, behind the feelings, that presence, still, silent, aware? That's you. And that's the you the system cannot touch because it doesn't operate in fear or comparison or survival. It just is, but that presence has been buried under layers of performance. And the deeper your persona goes, the more effort it takes to maintain it. That's why so many people feel exhausted and don't know why. It's not just their job or their schedule. It's the energy drain of pretending to be someone they're not. Every social interaction becomes a rehearsal. Every relationship becomes a negotiation of masks. And the soul, unseen and unspoken, begins to dim in the background. Not dead, just forgotten. Reclaiming your true self isn't about fixing the mask. It's about dropping it. It's not about becoming better. It's about becoming real. That means allowing yourself to be raw, unpolished, contradictory, and alive. It means letting go of who you think you need to be in order to be loved and instead standing as what you actually are. Infinite awareness, having a temporary experience as a human being, not to escape life, but to live it fully without illusion. You were never meant to fit into this system. That uncomfortable feeling you carry, that constant friction, that's not dysfunction. It's your divinity rejecting limitation. It's The reminder that the roles you've played were never built to hold your truth. The truth doesn't need a name. It doesn't need validation. It just needs space to be remembered. And that remembering doesn't require you to transcend the world, only to stop mistaking the mask for the master. Let the persona go. What's left is what was always real. Spiritual awakening doesn't begin in your head. It begins in your body. That might sound strange when everything you've been taught about awakening points upward toward thought, ideas, abstract concepts. But the truth is, your body isn't separate from your consciousness. It is consciousness condensed into matter, shaped by light, animated by energy. And the system knows that. That's why it doesn't just target your mind, it targets your biology. If they can keep your body sluggish, inflamed, numb, disconnected, they don't need to control your thoughts. They've already won before the first thought appears. Think about it. You've been conditioned to see your body as something mechanical, an object to drag through your day, something to push, fix, punish, or decorate, but never as sacred, never as intelligent, never as the vessel of divine potential. Yet every ancient spiritual tradition knew this. The body was never a burden. It was a temple, not just in theory, but in function. Every breath you take, every cell in your gut, every spark in your nervous system, it's all part of a living code designed for perception beyond the five senses. And they've spent centuries teaching you to ignore it. Start with the gut. Your gut produces more neurotransmitters than your brain. It's your second brain, regulating your mood, your energy, and your spiritual receptivity. But it's constantly under attack. Pesticides, processed food, antibiotics, synthetic preservatives, all of it designed not just to destroy gut flora, but to destroy your capacity to feel clearly. When your gut is compromised, your mind is clouded. When your digestion is inflamed, your thoughts are unstable. They don't want you to be sharp, focused, and intuitive. They want you bloated, distracted, emotionally volatile. And they've engineered the food system to make sure of it. But it's not just the food. It's your water, your air, your light. Tap water filled with endocrine disruptors, air saturated with industrial toxins, artificial light that scrambles your circadian rhythm and drains your life force. And through it all, you're told this is normal. You're told to adapt, to medicate, to caffeinate, and carry on. And when your body starts breaking down, they offer pills instead of root solutions. They give you diagnosis after diagnosis, but never ask the real question: what are you feeding the instrument of your divinity? Because the system doesn't profit from your clarity. It profits from your chaos. This is why healing your body isn't just a wellness trend. It's an act of rebellion. It's the foundation of awakening. Your consciousness can't fully rise in a body that's drowning in inflammation, toxicity, and fatigue. You can't connect to the divine when your nervous system is in survival mode. You can't remember who you are when your cells are constantly battling the poisons of modern life. Liberation isn't only mental, it's cellular. And every choice you make, every meal you eat, every breath you take is either feeding your awakening or feeding your suppression. And here's the real breakthrough. Your body wants to wake up. It's always communicating, always recalibrating, always moving toward healing when you give it even half a chance. And when you start treating it like the intelligent, energetic vessel it is, everything shifts. Your thoughts clear, your emotions balance, your intuition sharpens. And that's not a coincidence. That's coherence. The state where your body, mind, and spirit align into one unified field. That's when you stop living from your head and start living from your whole being. That's when awareness stops being a concept and starts becoming your baseline. Most spiritual teachings bypass this. They tell you to meditate your problems away while still eating food that numbs your senses and scrolling until your dopamine is fried. But you can't hack your way to awakening. You have to live it. You have to feel it in your skin, in your gut, in your breath. This is the embodiment, not the aesthetic kind, but the kind that rewires your nervous system and clears the fog from your perception. Because the divine doesn't just live in the sky or in scriptures. It lives in your blood, your bones, your breath. You don't have to look outside to find it. You just have to clean the vessel it's been trying to move through all along. The breath is not just air, it's a code. Every inhale is an entry point. Every exhale, a release. It's the most underestimated force in the spiritual toolkit because it's the most obvious, the most constant, and yet it's the most potent. While the world trains you to look outward for solutions, your breath has been quietly holding the key to your liberation the entire time. You just forgot how to use it. You breathe on autopilot, but you were never meant to breathe unconsciously. The ancients knew this. They built entire systems around intentional breathwork, not just for relaxation, but for transformation. In Vedic teachings, the breath is prana, life force, the bridge between the physical and the subtle. In Taoist alchemy, it circulates qi, activating the body's inner elixir. In Hermetic tradition, the breath was the rhythm of spirit animating matter. Every mystical path, from Egypt to the Himalayas, understood. If you control your breath, you can control your state of consciousness. And if you can control your consciousness, you can remember what you are. But the modern world disconnects you from this. Fast-paced living, chronic stress, shallow breathing, it all constricts your life force. Most people spend their days breathing from the upper chest, never filling their lungs, never activating the full potential of their energetic system. The result is more than just tension. It's a closed circuit, a short-circuited light body. You end up living in a fog, unable to access the clarity that's always been just a few deep breaths away. Because your breath doesn't just move oxygen, it moves energy. And your body isn't just flesh and bone. It's a frequency field. Chakras, nadis, meridians, auric layers. These aren't New Age fantasies. They're maps of your energetic anatomy. They represent how life force flows through you and, more importantly, where it gets stuck. Trauma, fear, suppressed emotion. These don't just vanish. They lodge themselves in your energy body like static in a signal. And when the energy can't flow freely, neither can your awareness. You think you're just tired or anxious or blocked. But often, it's an energetic congestion begging to be moved. This is where breath becomes medicine. Conscious breathing, when done with intention, rhythm and awareness, starts clearing the pathways. You begin to feel heat, tingling, emotional release, expanded states of perception. Not because something external is happening, but because something internal is finally being allowed to flow. You're not adding anything new. You're removing what was never supposed to stay. And as the channels open, something ancient stirs. The dormant intelligence at the base of your spine, what yogis call kundalini, starts to rise. This isn't a metaphor, it's electric, it's alive. It's the raw power of your own divinity waking up. And it doesn't need permission. It needs space. It needs breath. It needs you to stop outsourcing your power and start engaging with the tools that have always been right under your nose. You don't need complicated rituals or external teachers to begin. You need presence. You need patience. You need the courage to feel. Because real breathwork isn't always euphoric. It can bring up everything the system taught you to bury: grief, rage, ecstasy, truth. But through it all, something deeper emerges. A quiet, unmistakable knowing that you are not just surviving this life. You are here to live it fully from your source, not your conditioning. This is why the breath is sacred. It's not just a biological function. It's a spiritual strategy. It is the most portable, direct, and democratic path to remembering the divine within you. It requires no belief, no middleman, no cost, only awareness. The system doesn't want you to remember this because the moment you do, you become your own healer, your own guru, your own liberation. You want to unblock the God within you? Start here. Close your eyes. Inhale fully. Exhale slowly. Do it again and again, not as a technique, but as a remembering. You were never disconnected. You were only holding your breath. You don't need to be hypnotized in a theater to live in a trance. You already are. Most people walk through their lives like actors who forgot their acting, locked into patterns so rehearsed they feel real. Wake up, scroll, consume, react, sleep, repeat. It's not just a habit. It's programming, not through force, but through repetition. And the most dangerous part, it's disguised as normal, as harmless, as just how things are. You think you're living your life, but you're really playing out a script you didn't write. Culture is the delivery system. Every tradition, every holiday, every daily routine, they're not as organic as they seem. They were shaped by someone for a reason. Take a closer look. The school bell you heard every day wasn't just a time signal, it was classical conditioning. Pavlov rang a bell and dogs salivated. The system rang a bell and you moved. Not because you chose to, but because you were trained to. And it didn't stop when you graduated, it just changed form. Now the bell is your alarm clock, your email ping, your social media notification, all of it designed to keep you externally focused and internally absent. You're constantly reacting, never fully present, never fully here. That's not an accident. It's engineering. The more distracted you are, the less you question. The more rushed you feel, the less likely you are to pause and ask, is any of this even mine? Think about the holidays, supposed celebrations of life, love, and family turned into rituals of debt, overeating, obligation, and stress. You're told to show up, spend money, perform happiness. If you don't, you're the outsider, the rebel, the problem. Look at the architecture of it. Christmas, consumerism dressed up as compassion. Valentine's Day, conditional love monetized. Halloween, a festival of masks. But the biggest mask is pretending any of it still feels sacred. These are not celebrations. They are rituals of distraction, repetitive ceremonies that anchor you to the script. Buy, conform, belong, smile for the photo, post it, check for likes, and call it a life. This isn't about shaming participation, it's about seeing it clearly, because once you see the programming, you're no longer hypnotized by it. You can still show up, but from a place of awareness, not autopilot. And that's the shift the system fears most, not resistance, not rebellion, but non-participation in the trance. When you stop performing for invisible judges, when you stop chasing approval through rituals that drain your soul, you reclaim something they can't sell you: presence. Even language itself is part of the trance. Phrases like, "That's just how it is," or "You've got to be realistic," aren't observations, they're spells, tiny agreements that lock you into limitation. Every time you repeat them, you reinforce the cage. And the cage becomes invisible, which makes it inescapable unless you start listening, not just to others, but to the words that come out of your own mouth. Are they yours? Or did you inherit them from people who never questioned them either? And let's talk about the corporate rituals, the morning meetings, the KPIs, the endless hustle culture that pretends burnout is a badge of honor. These are not pathways to purpose. They are distraction loops designed to keep you tired enough to comply, but functional enough to continue. You're not thriving in this system, you're surviving it. And they'll keep it that way as long as you keep mistaking structure for meaning, routine for freedom, and busyness for value. But beneath the noise, there's still a signal, a subtle hum in your awareness that something's off, that this isn't what life was supposed to be, that maybe, just maybe, you're living in someone else's idea of reality. That whisper isn't your imagination, it's your intelligence, your higher self, your divinity tapping the glass from the inside, asking you to notice, to pause, to break the rhythm just long enough to remember who you were before the script got installed. The trance only works when you don't know it's a trance. And culture only holds power over you when you believe it's yours. But it's not. It was handed to you, marketed to you, drilled into you. And the moment you stop blindly accepting it is the moment you start authoring something else. Something real, something that comes from within, not from habit. You don't have to escape the world. You just have to wake up inside it. It's one thing to awaken. It's another to live awakened. Most people don't realize that. They chase the peak experience, the moment of clarity, the flash of insight, the jolt of cosmic energy, and then go straight back to living like they never saw what they saw. But awakening isn't meant to be a moment. It's meant to be a life. It's not something you visit. It's something you become. And if you stop at the insight without integrating it, all you've done is collect another spiritual souvenir. Integration is the true test. Can you carry the awareness you touched in meditation into a heated argument? Can you stay rooted in presence while the world around you pulls at your attention, your ego, your fears? Can you live as the God within, not just when it feels good, but when it's inconvenient, uncomfortable, even risky? That's the threshold where most stop, right when embodiment begins. Because living from your divinity means breaking every agreement you made while asleep. It means letting go of identities that won you approval. It means releasing goals that were born from insecurity. It means walking through your life with a level of self-responsibility that the ego wants nothing to do with. The God within you doesn't play status games. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't measure worth in likes or followers or income. It's pure, quiet, unwavering presence. And it either animates your choices or it's buried under them. The world doesn't need more awakened ideas. It needs more awakened people who show up differently in their relationships, in their work, in their daily decisions. Not in a performative way, but in a grounded, steady way that radiates truth. When you embody your divinity, you don't need to declare it. It's felt. You walk into a room, and your presence does the speaking, not because you're special, but because you're aligned. No masks, no performance, just coherence. Just the frequency of someone who's remembered who they are and decided to live like it. This is where everything begins to change, not from outside validation, but from internal revolution. You no longer tolerate what drains you. You no longer shrink to fit spaces that ask you to dim your light. You no longer seek safety in silence. Instead, you live out loud. You speak with clarity. You move with purpose. And you become a mirror, uncomfortable for some, liberating for others. Because your embodiment reminds people of what they've forgotten in themselves. And this isn't about being perfect. It's about being real. The ego wants to appear enlightened. The soul just wants to be free. And freedom doesn't always look graceful. Sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it's awkward. Sometimes it's having hard conversations, making unpopular choices, or standing alone in your truth. But when you choose embodiment, you stop outsourcing your integrity. You stop waiting for permission. You stop abandoning yourself for comfort. That's the deepest form of rebellion in a world built on illusion. Living as your unfiltered, untamed divine self, not just in private, not just in safe spaces, but everywhere. Because the system doesn't fear your theories. It fears your embodiment. It fears the person who doesn't just know their divinity, but lives like it every single day, with their words, with their habits, with their presence. You don't need another spiritual high. You need a spiritual spine, one that supports you when your old life starts falling apart, one that guides you when the noise gets loud, one that reminds you who you are, even when everything outside tries to make you forget. That spine is built through choice, through practice, through presence. This is what it means to embody the God within. Not one day, not someday, but now. There's a moment in every awakening journey where you stop searching, Not because you've given up, but because you finally realized there was nothing missing. That the thing you were chasing, the truth you were trying to grasp, the version of yourself you were waiting to become, it was here all along, hidden not in some distant dimension or rare philosophy, but beneath every distraction, every lie, every layer of programming they taught you to call reality. You never lost your divinity. You just stopped looking where it lives, within. This is the final remembering, the moment the seeker dissolves. The moment the God within stops whispering and starts speaking, not in thunder or fire or spectacle, but in stillness, in presence, in the quiet, knowing that you are the awareness behind it all, the witness behind the thoughts, the field within which everything appears and disappears. You are never a role, a job, a body, or a story. You were and always are the infinite consciousness choosing to have a temporary experience through a finite form. And in that remembering, something strange happens. You stop needing to fight. You stop trying to convince. You stop wrestling with systems that only ever had power because you agreed to forget. The moment you withdraw that agreement, the illusion starts to crack, not just outside, but inside. Your fears don't vanish, but they lose their grip. Your doubts don't disappear, but they no longer define you. Your past doesn't change, but it stops owning you. You become lucid in the dream. That's what this has always been. A dream. A convincing, immersive, beautiful, terrifying, holy dream. Not to escape, but to awaken inside of. And now you're awake, not in the performative, spiritual, bio-aesthetic way, but in the lived, breath-by-breath awareness that you are not what happens to you. You are the one it happens within. And from that place, you don't just react to the world, you respond as the world. Because the divine doesn't watch from afar, it experiences through you. So what happens now? Now you live differently. No more roles for acceptance, performances for applause, or shrinking for safety. You embody truth, moment by moment, choosing relationships that fuel growth, food that sharpens clarity, words that align with your energy. You guard your sacred energy, create, rest, connect, and remember. No saviors coming, no guru, no finish line hands you freedom. You're already what you seek, holding what you've chased. The only barrier is the illusion you need to become more. There's nothing to become, just more to release. Your clarity speaks a forgotten language. Some flee your light, threatened by its challenge to their darkness. Others are drawn, unaware why. You're not here to convince, but to be. That's your gift, your mission, your embodiment. You weren't born for smallness or silence, but to be electric, wild, infinite, a living expression of the source. No system or label can change that truth. The divine in you has always waited. You were never meant to be small. You were never meant to be quiet. You were never meant to live a life of muted wonder and managed obedience. You were meant to be electric, wild, infinite. You were meant to walk this earth as a living expression of the source itself. That's not a metaphor. That's your truth. And no system, no label, no amount of conditioning can change it. The God within you has always been waiting. And now, you've remembered. What did you think about today's video? Feel free to share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Thank you for watching. If this video opened your mind or helped you see reality in a new light, don't forget to like and subscribe to Top Hidden Knowledge so you never miss our next deep dive into mystery, perception, and the hidden workings of our universe. And if you have time, explore more videos on our channel. We're just getting started. Until next time, stay curious, stay aware, and never stop questioning the world around you.